So welcome guys to this section, and this section we're gonna build a fitness tracker app. So here you see the app, it's named Fitify. So I can just add anything. So I'm gonna just add my weight, so in kgs, yeah, maybe like 50 kgs, and I can click on go, and then my weight will be added. There you go, April 4th, and then 50 kgs has been added. So when I click on weight, there you go, I have only this, right? But when I now add a height, so I can just select in height here. So I can just track my weight and height. The main intention of this app is to just track the weight and height of a person. So I can just say 170, and then I can click on go. So this is just an example, don't think it's my real height and my real weight. So if I click on height, there you go, this is my height. Now if I click on all, everything will be shown, but the weight, only the weight, and then height, only the height has been shown. Now if I just click on, if I just add in a weight and height tomorrow, then the date will be shown here, April 5th, and then the weight and height. So we're going to use some grouped list view builders. And also the cool thing about this app is we're going to use a local database. So where am I actually storing this data? So I'm storing this data into a local SQLite database. So we're going to use the SQLite package in Flutter. With that package, we can just store the whole data into a local SQLite database without using any Cloud, Firestore, or Node.js or MongoDB. We're just using our local database. And yeah, so I'm just querying it everything with the local database. So it's pretty much a simple app. I can also delete this if I want. I also have a delete option. So it's a pretty simple app, as you see. I'm just excited to build this project with you guys. So let me just see you in the coding tutorials. Alright, so I've created a new Flutter project, and let's get some packages. So let's go to pubspec.yaml and get these packages. So the first package I'm going to get is a Google Fonts package. With this package, of course, I'm going to configure all my fonts. Then I have the Intel package. With this package, I'm going to format my date. Then we have the grouped list package. With this package, we're going to actually use the custom list view builder, right? So as you saw in the introduction video, we have a date header, and in between those, we have those data banners. So we're going to use this grouped list package to actually display those widgets like that, but of course we'll come to it later on. And then I'm going to use the SQLite package for actually configuring my local SQLite database to store the data there, to get the data, to delete the data, to insert the data in my local database. Then I need the path provider package to actually configure my database. So for some configuration stuff, I actually need this package. And yeah, after getting all the packages, let's go to main.dart and actually build out our home screen. So in main.dart, let's do some cleanup. Let's actually delete this material app and have another home. So I'm going to just delete everything from here. I'm going to close the material app. Okay, perfect. And in the material app, let's actually disable the debug banner. So I'm going to say debug show checked mode banner is going to be false. Then I have to give a home. So the home of this is going to be in home screen. And let's actually create that widget or that screen. In the lib folder, let's get a new folder named screens, where we will have all our screens. In the screens folder, I'm going to create a new file named home screen .dart. Let's import Flutter here and create a stateful widget, because we're going to use a stateful widget, and let's just name it home screen. Let's take this and let's actually just import the file from here. So I'm going to just import this library. Perfect. Let's save everything, and we should actually have a black container, because in the home screen I'm returning a container. There you go, I have a black container. Let's go to home screen and return a scaffold so that I can give some background color and also floating action buttons. So return scaffold, and in the scaffold, let me first of all give a background color, right? So the background color is going to be kind of like a grayish color. It's like a mixture of white and gray. So I'm going to say background color is color, and I already have my hex code. It is FB F5 F5. It's like a mixture of white and gray, as you see here. It's kind of like a gray color. And after that, let's just give a body. So the body of this is going to be a single child scroll view, because my whole screen should be responsive and scrollable. So I'm going to just wrap it into a single child scroll view. Perfect. Let's save everything, and we should have a grayish background color. And there you go, perfect. So yeah, it's like a mixture of white and gray, as I already said. So the body is a single child scroll view, and in the single child scroll view, I will have a column because I'll have widgets beneath each other. So the child, the single child scroll view will be a column with multiple children, and the first child is going to be the header of the whole app. So text is going to be like, let's give a title. As I said, the title is going to be just Fitify, and the style of the text widget, let's actually create a new function named text style so that I don't have to write it again and again. So let's create a new file in the lib folder itself and just name it utils.dart. In utils.dart, I'm going to import Flutter because I'm going to use some text style properties. So import Flutter, and I'm going to return a text style. So text style, I'm going to create a function named text style. It's going to take in, first of all, a double font size, so double size, and as optional parameters, only as optional parameters, it's going to take in the color and also the font weight, so like how bold it should be. I'm going to just name it FW. Here I'm going to return whichever font I want. So return, I'm going to use the Google Fonts package for that. So return Google Fonts dot Montserrat, because I'm going to use the Montserrat font. And the font size, I'm going to just give it for this size parameter here, which I'm providing, and the color, just this color parameter there, and the font weight, just this font, this FW there. Okay, perfect. Now I can use this text style function wherever I want. I don't have to write return Google Fonts so and so, like I don't have to write return Google Fonts multiple times. I can just use this function named text style wherever I want. I just have to pass in the arguments. So text Fitify, and the style here, I'm gonna just say the text style function. Let's import a text style function, and in the function itself, it's gonna take in a, as I said, the font size. So font size, I'll just say 45 pixels, and the color is going to be colors.black, and the font weight is going to be font weight.w600. Let's save everything, and we should have a text named Fitify with font with 45 pixels of size. I have a warning, or like it's not updating because I actually have to save everything because I have a new file named utils.dart, right? So let me just save everything. So still we don't have it. Yeah, I know the problem. We had this problem multiple times, right? This HTML package is automatically importing. Of course, we don't want this. I don't know why it's automatically importing every time. I just hate it. Let's save everything now and see if we have our text name Fitify. There you go, perfect. With the Montserrat font, but the problem is, first of all, it should be in the center, right? So it should kind of be here, the center. So first of all, let's actually also provide some padding. I'm going to wrap the whole child of this into a padding. Here I'm going to say edge insets dot only. From the top I want some padding, so from the top I want 50 pixels of padding. Let's save everything, and we should have a text Fitify. There you go, and I have 50 pixels padding from the top. And now again the problem is it's not in the center, but if I render out the other widgets, so down here I'll have the tab bar, right? So I'll have all weight and height tab bar, then it will come automatically into the center. So let's actually not bother about this now. Let's actually here provide some sized box. So I want some spacing between this text widget and the tab bar. So sized box, height 15. Now let's actually create our whole tab bar. So again, the problem is I don't want I don't want the tab bar which Flutter provides me. I actually want to create a custom tab bar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap it into a row, because in the row I'll have children's next to each other. Then I'll have 3 tab chips. So I'll have a weight chip, I'll have an all chip, and I have the height chip, and according to state I will just render out the color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually create a row, because I'll have 3 widgets, right? I'll have 3 chips next to each other. So row, it's going to take multiple children. It's going to actually just take 3 children. And let's create the tab bar. So actually not the tab bar, it's just the tab itself. So the tab itself, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say it's going to be a child. So not child, I said it's a chip, sorry for that. It's a chip, and it's going to take in a label. So the label is going to be just a text widget. and let's say all, because when the user selects this, then we'll also show the weight data and also the height data. But if the user selects on the weight data, then like if he selects on the weight tab, then we'll only show the weight data. And the style of this is, again, I'm going to use the text style function. It's going to take in a font size, so font size 18 pixels, and the color, let's say colors.white, and the font weight is font weighted W700, not W600. Let's align everything perfectly. Okay, we have the child, we have the label, so we have the label, and let's actually also provide a background color for the chip. The background color is going to be a red accent color, so colors.red accent. And then let's also give elevation so that we can differentiate between the chip and the background color of the scaffold. So elevation is going to be 10. Sorry for that. So 10. When I save everything, I should have a chip. There you go, all. And as you saw, this text automatically is at the center. We don't have to worry about it. Automatically it will go into the center. We have one chip, so we said all. So the problems, we're going to render out 3 chips, right? So we're going to have the all chip, we're going to have the weight chip, and also the height chip. But the problem is they'll also have some state, and I will write lots of repetition, so I don't want to have lots of repetition. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a function named build tab, which is actually going to build me the tab itself. So here I'm going to say build tab. It takes in a string text and also a boolean selected or not. So if it's selected or not, bool selected, and here I can return the chip. So return, where is it, the chip, return chip, perfect. And instead of saying all, I'll say text. So the text parameter here should be provided for the text property here. Now when I save everything, nothing will be changed, but actually let's call this build tab function here. Instead of saying chip, build tab, we have to provide the, we have to actually provide the text itself. So I'll say all, and we don't actually have to provide the bool selected, right? Because so here we are gonna have a variable name selected or not, but we'll actually handle it later on. Let's just say build tab string text. The text is depending on a text argument. Okay, build tab all, then I'm gonna have a build tab weight, then I'm gonna have a build tab for the height. If we select on the height tab, then we're gonna show only the height values. Build tab height. Let's save everything, and we should have 3 chips next to each other. So we have all, weight, and height. But again, the problem is, first of all, they need some padding. Second of all, everything is in the red color. If it's not selected, then I want them in a white color, and the text color itself should be black. But as I said, I'll handle it later on when I have the state. For now, let's actually just give some padding. So here, return chip, let's actually provide some padding between these 3 widgets itself. So edge insets dot only, from the right side, let me just provide 5 pixels of padding. Now they'll be aligned next to each other, but now of course they also have some padding in between them. And let's wrap this whole row itself into a padding, because from the left side I want 20 pixels of padding, from the right side I also want 20 pixels of padding when I also render out the whole data banners. So I'm going to wrap this row also into a padding. Here I'm going to say edge insets dot only. From the left side, give 20 pixels of padding, and from the right side also just give 20 pixels of padding. This should be good. Okay, perfect. I have all, weight, and height tab bar. Now what we're going to do is we're going to actually render out the items. So we're going to have multiple items. So we're going to have the weight item and also the height item. We also have to implement the add item functionality. So after building the UI for the top section, let's actually implement the item banners, where we'll have the image, the data, and also the delete icon button. So after this padding itself, I'm going to have a sized box. So I don't need a sized box. Let me just create a list view builder. Now you guys can actually wonder like why I'm using a list view builder and why not a grouped list view builder, because I got the package in the pubspec.yaml file, right? So yeah, you're actually right, but the problem is when I have the data only I can actually implement it, because I didn't create any model or something like that. So for now I'll just build the list view builder, and later on where I get the data back and I also implement the SQLite database, then I'm going to use the group list view builder. So for now I'm going to just go with the list view builder, and for the item builder it takes in a context. Actually yeah, the grouped list view builder is pretty much also similar to list view builder. We just have to change some value. So okay, I'm going to provide the context and also the index, in which index this currently is in, and here we're going to return a card, because then because for the card I can give some elevation, that's why I love to use the card. Here I'm going to give a shape for the whole card, so the shape is going to be a rounded rectangular border, so that I can give some border radius, and the border radius I'm gonna just go with 15 pixels. Border radius are circular, and after the shape I'm gonna provide the child of the whole card. So the child of the whole card is going to be a list style, because in the list style I can provide an image, a title, and also a trailing widget where I'll have the delete icon button. So the image I'm going to provide at the leading property, a widget to display before the title. So the leading is going to be an image, and the image widget takes in an image provider. So image provider, I'm going to get it from the asset image. So image is going to be an asset image, and the asset name, you actually have to get the images right. So for actually providing the images, I have an images folder in my lib folder with the two images. So one is for the height, so height.png. I also have the weight.png image, and these images, so to recognize the images, Flutter actually needs to know that I have this images folder. Let's go to pubspec.yaml, and I already configured them. So I already configured them here. So I have the assets here, and I'm saying go to the images folder and get all the images, and make sure to save the whole pubspec.yaml. And I think you don't need to do a restart, like you just have to save it. Now let's go to home screen and provide the whole image. So asset image, it's going to be in the images folder, and for now I'm going to just render out the weight.png. But later on, depending on the data, so if it's the height value, then I'm going to show height.png. If it's the weight value, I'm going to show weight.png. Okay, perfect. So I have the image, and let's also provide a width for the whole image. So the width is going to be 50 pixels and height is going to be 50 pixels actually. And let's actually just restart everything so that we have all the values updated. So okay, after restarting, everything is cleared out. I don't know why, but let's actually see. Okay, we have this typical hash size error. So whenever we use list_view.builder, we have that error, right? First of all, I forgot to provide the item count, because now Flutter actually doesn't know how many items I have. So let's actually say item count. For now I'll just say 3, and I also have to say shrink wrap. So shrink wrap has to be true, and physics is going to be a never scrollable scroll physics, because the problem with Flutter is I'm already in a single child scroll view, and now it will get confused between the both scroll, because this is also scrollable, right? Now Flutter will be confused which widget to take and like where to scroll. That's why one widget we actually have to disable the scrollability, because we already have the scrollability in a single child scroll view. Let's actually also provide the physics here. So physics here is going to be just a scroll physics. Now when I save everything, I should have my list view builder with all the list styles. No, I don't have it. Again, there should be a problem. Let's actually just save everything. Let's actually just do a full restart and check out if we have any updates. Okay, there you go, perfect. So we have 3 cards, because I said item count is for now 3, and later on of course I'm going to do it dynamically, but now I'm just hard coding. So at the leading we have the image, and we also have to provide the title and then the delete icon. So let's actually provide the title. Later on we're going to actually also give some spacing and so on. So the title for the whole list style is going to be a text widget. For now I'll just say maybe 65 kgs. Let's provide a style. So the style is going to be a text style function. It takes in a font size, so font size is 27, and the color is going to be colors.black, and the font weight is font weight to W600. Let's also provide the trailing icon. So at the right side of the whole card we're going to have a trailing property, and it's going to take in delete button. So here I'm going to say icon is icons.delete. It's going to take in a color, so the color is going to be a red accent color, so colors.red accent. Size is going to be 26 pixels, or let's actually say 28 maybe. And now when I save everything, I should have a title and also a delete button at the right side. Okay, there you go, perfect. And kgs, let's actually make it smaller, so I'll say kg in a lowercase. There you go, 65 kgs. And okay, we have the list, we have the leading, we have the title, and also the trailing. Let's provide some padding, right? Because this actually doesn't look beautiful, and let's also give some alignments at the from the left side and also from the right side. So what I'm going to do again, I'm going to wrap this list view builder into a padding. I'm going to say from the left side give 20 pixels of spacing, or actually padding. From the right side also 20 pixels. When I say everything, I should have 20 pixels. There you go, I have 20 pixels. I have 20 pixels spacing from the left side and also from the right side, and we don't have any elevation, right? So let's also provide an elevation for the card. Elevation is going to be 6. Now the whole card should be kind of like elevated. There you go, perfect. And also for the list style itself, I don't have any padding, so I'm going to wrap this list style also into padding so that I have some padding in the list style. I'm going to give 6 pixels of padding. Okay, there you go, perfect. And we also don't have any padding between these whole items, so I want to have some padding between this banner and also this banner. So I'm going to wrap the whole card also into padding. So okay, we have lots of paddings. Edge insets that only let's say, yeah, from the top let's provide 6 pixels of padding. This should be good. And there you go. Now I also have some spacing between the item banners itself. So what I did was I created the UI. Let's also give some fit for the image. So let's fit in this image. So fit is going to be box fit dot cover. Okay, so I also have the fit property, I have the title, I have the delete icon. And now the next thing we should actually do is we should actually implement the add item functionality before getting the data back. So we need a dialog where we can provide the data, and then we're going to store the whole data into an SQLite database, and later on we'll get the whole data back into our list view builder and show the whole data. So alright, let's actually implement the add item functionality. I should have a floating action button in my scaffold, so when I click on that, I should actually have a dialog where I can add in my details. Then I can click on add item, then it will take the whole data and add it to our database. Let's go to scaffold. Here after the background color, let's say floating action button is going to be a chip again. So floating action button is going to be a chip, and it's going to take in a label. So the label is going to be a text widget, and I'm going to say I'll just say add, and the style for this I can again use my text style function. It's going to take 22 pixels of font size, and the color is going to be colors.white, and the font weight is going to be font weight of W600. And in the chip itself I can provide the background color. So the background color is going to be colors.red accent, and then I can provide a delete icon. So delete icon, this delete icon is going to be just an icon provided after the label itself. So next to the label I have to display an icon, and they named it just delete icon. So don't think we have to provide the delete icon you can actually just provide any icon we want, but this will be just displayed after the add text label. And the icon, it takes in an icon, so the icon I'm going to just provide an add icon, so icons.add. Then it's going to take in a color, and the color is going to be colors.white for the icon, and also the size of the icon is going to be 26 pixels. Let's save everything, and we should have a floating action button. There you go, add. But we don't have the add icon because we didn't do anything with the on deleted function. So we actually also have to provide the on deleted property. When the user clicks on this, then something has to happen, right? So for now I'll just print click. Let's save everything, and we should also now have the add icon. There you go, perfect. Let's open up the terminal, and when I click on the add icon, there you go, clicked, perfect. But when I click on the add icon, I should have a dialog opened up, and in the dialog I can provide the whole details. So instead of saying print clicked, I'm going to call a function named open dialog, maybe, or maybe open add dialog. This should be good. It's going to take in a current context because it actually accepts the context. I'm going to create the function open add dialog. Here I'm going to accept in the context, and to actually show a dialog in Flutter, we just return the show dialog function. So show dialog, it takes in the context, that's why I received the context here. It takes in the builder, so let's actually build the whole dialog. So in the builder, I'm gonna have the current context, and I'm gonna return the dialog. So let's actually here in the builder, let's return a dialog. And a child of this is going to be a container. It's going to take in a height, so 220. It's going to take in a child column because I'll have multiple widgets. Beneath each other, so child is going to be a column. It's going to take in multiple children, this column itself. It's going to take in a text widget, so text widget is going to be just the header of the whole dialog. So I'm going to just say add the style. I'm going to again use this text style function. The font size, I'm going to say 28, and the color is going to be colors.black, and the font weight W700 should be good. And after the text add header, let's actually provide some spacing. So I'm going to use a sized box widget of, let's provide an height. So height is going to be 15 pixels. Then after the sized box, after providing the spacing, let's have a row because I'll have two widgets next to each other now. Row, sorry for that. Row is going to again take two children. So our first child is going to be a text field, right? So when I click on the text field, then I can actually provide the whole data. So it's going to take in a text form field. There I can enter in my data, and it's going to take in a style. So the style is going to be a text style function again, 20 pixels. Color is going to be colors.black, and the font weight is going to be font weight of W500. It's going to take in a decoration. So decoration, let's actually decorate the whole text form field. Input decoration. In text is going to be in kgs, so I'm going to write in kgs for the hint text. Let's also provide a border for the whole text form field. The border is going to be outline input border. So in case if you wonder what the hint text is, it's going to be just a light text widget in the text form field so the user knows what he has to enter. So outline input border for the border, and it's going to take in a border radius. So border radius, like I don't have any border radius, right? I'll just provide the border side so that I can give a color for the border side. So the border side is going to be a border side widget. You're going to take in the width. So the width is going to be 1, and the color is going to be colors.black. Let's actually save everything and see the updated dialog. Let's also align everything perfectly. Okay, we again have this .html. I don't want this. I don't know why it's automatically importing it. Okay, now when I click on the add icon, I should actually have a dialog. No, we don't have any dialog. Okay, we have a big error. So okay, I think the error is actually related to the text form field. Let's actually wrap this text form field into a container and provide the width and height. So the width of this is going to be 125 and the height of this, I'm going to say 40. Now let's save everything and click on the add icon. There you go, there you go. I have my dialog. So I have the add title and then I have also my text form field, and next to the text form field I should actually have a drop down button. So I don't know like which data he entered, right? I want to actually also provide the type of the data is entering. Is he entering the weight or the height? So for that I'll have a drop down. So before that, let's actually also provide padding for the add title there. So let's wrap this text widget into a padding. No, not this text widget. Let's actually just wrap the whole column into a padding and say edge instance dot only. From the top I want 20 pixels of padding. Now let's save everything, and of course I have to click on the dialog again so to see the updated changes. There you go. I have the add title, I have the text form field. Now let's actually just render out a drop down button. So after this container, so in the row itself, let's actually say main axis alignment. So I want to align everything. I want them to be aligned evenly. So I'm going to say main axis alignment or space evenly. And after the container, so after the text form field, I'm going to have a drop down button. And I'm going to provide an item. So I have a list of items. I'm going to have two items. So first item is going to be a drop down menu item. And it's going to take in a child. So a child is going to be a text widget which says weight, and it's going to take in a style of text style function. I'm going to call it text style function. I'm going to provide the font size, so it's going to be 18. Then the color is going to be colors are black, and the font weight is going to be font weight W700. And after the drop down menu item, I'm going to have another drop down menu item, but this time for the height. I'm going to copy and paste it over here. I'm going to say the child is going to be a text widget, and it's going to be a text widget, and the text widget's value is going to be in height string. And the drop down menu item, we should actually also provide a value here. So we actually have to see the value to return if the user selects the menu item. So the value it should return is going to be just in weight string. And for the other drop down menu item, the value here is going to be in height string. And for the drop down button, let's actually customize the whole drop down button. Let's first of all give a hint. So the placeholder, see the hint is actually just going to be, and wait, let me just show you. Hint is going to be just a placeholder widget that is displayed with a drop down button. So to just indicate the user what he has to do, he should actually just choose, right? So let's say hint is going to be a text widget, and I'm going to say choose. I'll call it text style function. So the style is going to be text style, 18 pixels, and the color is going to be colors.black, font weight .w700. Let's align everything. So hint is going to be text widget, and the drop down color, so the color itself is going to be a gray color. So colors.gray. And then the elevation for the whole drop down button, let's say 5 pixels. And the value is going to be, so we're going to have two values, right? For now I'll just say value is going to be weight. For now I'll just say weight. And on change, so what happens when you click on one drop down menu item, then we have to do something with it. Let's actually just print the value. Now let me just save everything. When I click on the add icon, let me see if I have the HTML. So I don't have it. So when I click on the add icon, I should have a drop down menu button. Now when I click on this drop down menu, there you go. I have two items opened up. One is the weight and other one is the height. But when I click on the height, nothing happens because we didn't implement the state, right? So of course later on we'll implement it. For now, let's build on our UI. So after the drop down menu button and the text form field, I'm gonna have an icon button for deleting the whole data, right? No, not so. I'm gonna have a icon button for adding the data, so it indicates that we can add something. When I click on that, then I'm gonna add data to my database. So after my row here, I'm gonna again have a sized box widget. The height is gonna be 15 pixels, and here I'm gonna say icon button. The icon is gonna be icons.double arrow. I'm gonna have this arrow, double arrow rounded. So I'm gonna have this icon indicating, so when the user clicks on that, he can actually do something. Like when the user clicks on that, we're gonna actually add the data into a database. So on press, so what happens when you press on it? Let's say print pressed, just for a placeholder. Later on I'll change it. And for the icon button, let's also provide a color. So the color is going to be the red accent color. So color is going to be colors.red accent, and the icon size is going to be 50 pixels. And that's it actually. Let's save everything. And now after the drop down menu button, also the text form field, I should have a double arrow icon. There you go. Perfect. Okay, perfect. When I click on this, of course nothing happens. We're gonna just print pressed, but when we actually implement our database, then we're gonna add the whole data from the text form field, and depending on a drop down value, then we're gonna add the whole data into our database. Okay, and so that's it for the UI of the whole app. So let's actually implement a database. So let's actually initialize our SQLite database and start adding values to our database. So after building the whole UI of our app, let's actually start working with the SQLite package and creating our database. So we're going to create a local SQLite database and add the data to the database, and later on we're going to query the whole database and get the data back, and then we're going to display the whole data here in the feature builder with the dynamic values, because now we just have some hard-coded values. So let's create a new folder named database. In lib, let me just create a new folder named database. So in the database folder, I'm going to create a new file named database service, where I'll have all the code for initializing my database, for actually opening up my database and adding the data to my database. I'm going to create a new class named database service. So I'm going to make my database service class actually a singleton class. Now you guys can wonder why I'm making it a singleton class. So I want to make the database service a singleton class because, so in the whole lifecycle of my app, I just want to have one instance of my database service. That's why I'm making it a singleton class. So let me just make a comment here and say singleton. So to make it a singleton class, there are multiple ways, but we're going to use an easy way named private constructor. So I'm going to create a private constructor and going to create a final instance. So here I'm going to say database service. So after a singleton comment here, I'm going to say database service dot private constructor. Okay, perfect. Now I'm going to create a static final database instance because I don't want the value to be changed. That's why I'm using a static final. So static final database service instance is database service dot private constructor. Perfect. So now we have a singleton class, and after having a singleton class, let's create our database. Pretty much let's actually just initialize our database. So initialize a database. So the value I'm going to return is a database type. So the return type is going to be a database type. So I'm going to say static database. So this database type actually comes with the SQLite package. There you go, automatically it imported it. Static database. So this is a variable, and I'm going to create a getter for it. So I'm going to create a getter to get the whole database, and it's going to return a future. So I'm going to say future database, and I'm going to create a get method. So I'm going to say get db, and I'm going to make it an asynchronous function because it could take some time to actually initialize the database to get the database and so on. That's why I'm making the async function. And then after that, I'm going to check if the database is null or not. So if database, so this database variable is not null, then return the whole database. So return database. But let's imagine if it is null. Let's actually just write out return database. Let's actually imagine if it is not, if it is null. So if it is null, then I want to initialize the database, right? So here I'm going to say database it is equal to await initialize database. So I have to actually create a function, and then I'm going to return this database variable here. Okay, perfect. Let's create this function named initialize database so that we don't have the error anymore. So initialize database, and again this is going to be an async function because it could take some time to initialize the whole database. So how to initialize a database? I actually have to create a database with the version name and so on, right? So where are we going to actually create a database? So we're going to create a database in the local application directory, because we're going to just use a local database, right? We're not using Firebase or something like that. We're just using a local database in our mobile device, and we're going to store the database in a mobile applications document directory. So let me just give it a database name here. I'm going to create a variable because I could use this name multiple times. That's why I'm just making it a variable. So static final db name is going to be just data.db. I'm going to just say data.db. Make sure you name it .db because it should have this extension .db. Then I'm going to give it a version. So static final db version. And if you're actually building a big project, then you need these versions, but we just have a small project. But as a practice, we're going to just give 1. So it's going to be an integer value. So 1 is the db version because we only actually have 1 db version. And here I'm going to get the directory, and that's why here we're going to use our .io here, this .io package. Make sure to import this automatically. The directory is going to be directory. So I kind of want to get the applications documents directory. So I want to get the documents directory in the mobile device, and now I can use my path provider package for that. So I can say await get applications directory because it could take some time to get the documents directory. That's why I'm saying await, and this way here I get the documents directory for the desired mobile device. Then I'm going to give it the path. So string path is going to be the directory path plus the database name. So to actually add those both values, I'm going to use this join function in the path package itself, and this actually automatically comes with Flutter. So I can just import it here. I'm going to say import path dot, and in that package, in that library, we actually have this join function which actually just joins the both path parts. So I can say join directory dot path and then also the database name, right? So I can just say database name. So now it's going to create a path with the directory path plus the database name. So after creating the path, now it's actually time to open the database and create a table in there. So to open the database, I'm going to just say return. Again, I'm saying await because it could take some time. So open database because this actually accepts a return type of database. So this initialized database accepts here and database, right? And here I'm not returning anything. I just created the path and I'm returning now the open database function, which is gonna again return as a database. with this open database function, we're gonna open the desired database in the path itself, and we can actually also create a table. So open database, I have to pass in the path. I can just pass in it like this, and then the version is going to be just a db version variable, and then on create. So whenever we create this, so whenever the database is created at the first time, then I want to execute a function named create table, which is actually going to create all the tables in my database. So on create, I can say create table. Let's create that function, create table. So after this, I'm going to say create table. And the problem here is, so first of all, this on create gives me a database and an integer, so it's going to also give me a version name. So I have to actually accept it here. I can say database db, and also it's going to give me the version, so int version. And here what I'm going to do is, here automatically I have the database, so I can just say db dot execute. So I can execute this SQL query, and I'm going to actually execute the SQL query, but the SQL query itself is going to be a query for actually creating a table. So I'm going to have 3 single quotes because I want to write it in a multiple lines. So the query to actually create a table in SQLite language is pretty much easy, right? We just have to say create table, but the problem is we don't have any table name. So let's again go up and create a variable. So static final, let's actually just name it table name, and let's actually give it a name. So like the name, I'm gonna just say activities, maybe activities, and I can just pass in the table name here. I'm gonna do a string interpolation because I'm passing a variable into a string. That's why I use the $ symbol, table name. And after creating the table, we actually have to pass in the titles of the whole columns. So we have multiple columns in our database table, right? And for those columns, we have also multiple titles for them. So here I'm going to say, first of all, I have a column ID. So let's actually think which column titles we have. So first of all, we have the column ID, then we have the type, so which type it is it weight or height? Then we have the actual data, so yeah, like 65 kgs, 140 centimeters, so on. And then we also have the date, so when did they enter the data? And now we kind of like have 4 titles, right? So let's create 4 variables. But before that, we kind of have a slight warning. Yeah, the problem was I have to call it like this. Okay, perfect. Now we don't have that warning anymore. Let's create four variables. So here, static final column ID, and I'm going to just name it column ID. So this is the column ID, and it's going to be a primary key. It's going to be a primary key because automatically it will be increased every time. I have a column ID, then I also have static final. To the type, is it weight or height? So I'm going to say type. Then I also have static final data. So what is the actual data? I can just say data. Then also the static final date. Okay, perfect. We have 4 variables with all these titles. And now what I'm going to do is here. So first of all, we have to column ID, right? So again, I'm going to do a string interpolation, column ID, and we have to specify the type of this. So this is going to be an integer. So this is going to be an integer, but it's also going to be a primary key. So that automatically is going to increase by 1 every time. That's why I'm using a primary key. And then we also have the type. So I can say type is going to be, so this type is going to be a text and should not be null. So text not null. Then we have the data. So what's the data? And the data is going to come in a float value, right? So to use floats in SQLite language, we have this real. So you can't say float or int. you have to say real. This real actually just stands in for float in that language, so real, it should not be null. And then we also have the date, and we're gonna store it as a text, and later on we'll parse it into date time. So text not null. Oh, perfect. I think that should be good. And after creating the table, let's actually also print table created so that we know everything is working perfectly. Table created. Okay, perfect. So we executed the table query, and I think we're actually pretty much finished with initializing the database. So yeah, I think we're finished. So let's have a quick review. We actually created a singleton class because we only want to have one instance of the whole database service in the whole lifecycle. Then we're going to initialize the database, so we're checking if the database is null or not. So if it is null, I'm going to initialize the database, but if it's not null, I'm just returning the database. And in the initialize database function, I'm going to get the documents directory because I'm going to store the whole SQLite database in my documents directory. Then yeah, I just open up the database with the path, the version, and then whenever it's created at the first time, I'm going to execute the SQL query, which is actually going to create the table of the whole database with the column titles. Yeah, that's it for this section actually. And the next videos, we're going to actually add some data to our database, because for now we only have functions for initializing it. We have to actually create some functions for adding the data, to delete the data, and also to get the whole data, right? So yeah, okay. So in our database service class, let's create a function which is going to actually add some data to our database. So after this create table function, let's create a new function which is actually going to return a future int, and let's actually just call it add activity, and it's going to take in a row, so the whole data, right? We need some kind of data to actually add data to a database, so it's going to take in a map, which is going to be a type of string, and the other one is going to be dynamic, and I'm going to just name it row. I have to pass in a map to this function whenever we call this function, and let's get the instance of the database, right? So I can just say database db is await, because it could take some time to get a database. That's why I mark this into an async function, asynchronous, and then await instance dot db. So this is how we get a database with the instance. After getting the database, let's insert into the database. So I can say return await db dot insert. So we can use, let me just introduce you to this. Let me just introduce you to these queries, right? There are two types of queries. So there are helper SQLite queries, which is gonna actually just, is like pretty much easy. You don't have to write in the raw SQL query, but we also have raw insert, where we actually have to write in the SQL query with the SQL language. But with this insert function, automatically we just have to pass in the table name and just the values, and the SQLite package is going to actually create the SQL query for us. So we don't have to write it, we just have to pass in the table and values. But if you're comfortable with raw query, you can of course use the raw query function. For now I don't want to have so much of code, that's why I'm just using the insert function. But of course later on, to get the data, I kind of need to use the raw query because it's pretty much easy. Okay, so db.insert, I have to pass in the table name, so I can just use my table name function, the table name variable up there, and the values are just going to be this row. Okay, perfect. So we have the add activity function, which is going to return a future int, because if the integer value is 1, that means successfully we have actually added the data. So if it is 0, that means we have some kind of error. And let's go to our home screen and call this add activity function. But first of all, we just have our UI, but we don't have any state for our dialog, right? So when I click on this add icon, I kind of can't get the text of this text form field, right? So let's create a controller for the text form field so that we can extract the text out of it. I'm going to say text editing controller is going to be a text editing controller. Okay, perfect. and let's pass in the controller into a text form field. Here I'm going to say controller is going to be a controller. Perfect. And let's actually also add some state for my drop down value, right? Because this drop down doesn't have any state, I'm going to create a string here. So string drop down value is going to be, so the default is going to be weight, but depending on the drop down value, of course I'm going to change it. And I can go to here, instead of saying value weight, hard coding it, I can use a dynamic variable up there. So I'm going to say drop down value. Okay, perfect. Now when I click on this on change, so whenever I click on this, I want to actually update my drop down value, right? So I can say set state drop down value. So the drop down value variable is going to be equal to whichever value I get from this on change function. And yeah, after actually updating the drop down value with set state, let's also actually, what do we want to do? So okay, wait, after updating it here for the hint text, so I'm gonna check if drop down value is gonna be weight. If it is equal to weight, then I'm going to say in kgs, but if it is height, then I'm going to say in centimeters, so the user knows what he has to enter. Let me just save everything, and we should see some UI updates for our dialog. So when I click on this add icon and click on this drop down and I click on height, okay, nothing is changing, but let's actually come back. Okay, now we have the updated value. Okay, so okay, there is a problem with the dialogues with Flutter. The problem is like we don't have any state for the dialog. We have to create a state builder, which is actually going to give us a state. The problem now is it's going to actually update whenever we open a dialog again, but when I now click on wait, it doesn't update, but when I come back again, it's going to update. That's the problem with the dialog. So this is quick solution. I can just wrap the whole container or just the dialog with a stateful builder, which is actually gonna give me a state setter. So from where I can actually set the state. So I can wrap this container into a stateful builder. For now, I'm gonna just take in the stream builder. I'm gonna change this to a stateful builder. So I can say stateful builder. Of course, it's not going to have any stream or something like that. So the stateful builder is going to give us a build context. So I can say build context is context. I'm going to just put in the return type, of course, here. So build context. And the another one is going to give me as a state setter. So I can accept it here, state setter. Let me just name it state setter. And now instead of saying set state, I can use this set state setter, which is actually pretty much the same as set state, but in the stateful builder. Now when I save everything, I will have the UI update in the dialog itself. You'll see it when I click on the plus icon and click on height. See, automatically everything has been updated because we have the stateful builder now. Okay, perfect. That means everything is been updated. And when I click on this icon, I want to actually add the data to my database, right? So here I'm going to say, instead of saying pressed, I want to actually add the data to my database. So the first one is actually, let's create an integer value of success, because as I said, this add activity function is going to return as an integer value. If it is 1, that means yeah, everything was perfect. Now I can use the add activity function. It's going to be in asynchronous function. So async, I'm going to say await database service dot instance, because I want to get the instance of the database service. And now I can just access the add activity function with that. Okay, now I have to pass in a row, like I have to actually pass in a map. So here I'm gonna pass in a map. So first of all, I have to pass in the column ID, but as I said, the column ID is going to be primary key, right? So the SQLite package, like the SQLite database automatically knows it, and it's going to automatically increase the value. I don't have to do anything, so I don't have to pass in the column ID, but I have to pass in the type of the whole thing. Okay, so I can say database service dot type is going to be a drop down value. Okay, perfect. Database service dot type, I can't say it like that, I have to actually get the instance of it. So instance dot, no wait, database service dot type should actually work. Okay, the problem is I have to say double points, right, because it's a map and I have key value pairs. Okay, perfect. I have to type. Now let's actually also pass in the date. So database service dot date is gonna be, yeah, just the current date, right? So I can say date time dot now, but in a string value, so dot to string. And let's also pass in the data. So I can say database service dot data is gonna be, I have to actually parse the whole controllers.text. So this controller which I created for a text form field is gonna give me a string, but I have to parse it back into double. So I can say double.parse controller.text should be good. Okay, controller.text. Okay, perfect. So now I'm adding everything into my database with this add activity function. I also passed in the map, and let me actually just print the success variable so that I know if everything went well or not. And then after printing the success, I want to actually clear out the text of the controller. So I'm going to just say controller.clear. Then I'm going to actually, yeah, just dismiss the dialog. So dismiss the dialog, I can just use a navigator.pop context, and we have a slight warning. Let's see. Oh, I don't have to pass in the semicolon. Let's just actually save everything. So let me just click on save all. Let's open up the terminal and see what happens. So now when I click on the plus icon, I want to pass in the weight. Okay, and let me just say as example 65, maybe, yeah, just 65. And I click on this button, and after a while, there you go, table created. That means the table was created and successfully returned the one value with this success variable. And if it returned 1, that means yes, everything was perfect and everything has been added. But if we have 0 or something like that, then we have an error. But if it returns 1, that means everything went successfully. And now what we can do in the next videos is we're going to actually query our database and get the database and show it in our UI. So we have created a function for adding all the activities, but we don't have any function for getting the activities back from the database, right? So let's go to database service and create a function for getting the activities. But because here you see we have only these 3 banners, we are not having data from the database. So here let's create a new function named get activities. We will get all the activities. So let's create this type of future, and then I'll have a list out of it. So I'll say list. Well, I just have to change my keyboard. Okay, perfect. List, and then it's a type of map again, and in the map I will store string and objects, right? So I'll say string and then also object, and I have to close this 3 times, I guess. Yes, perfect. And I'll just name the function, yeah, get activities. But for a parameter, the problem is we have all, weight and height, right? So I have to actually provide a category, right? So I'll just say string category, and depending on the category I'll query the data. So here I'll say string category, and now let's create a database instance. So I'll say database db is equal to await instance.db. Perfect. And I have to mark it as an async function to use actually await, right? So let's just mark it as an async function. Good. And now wait a minute, what's happening? Oh, I just forgot to open this, my fault. Okay, now we're ready to go. Sorry for the interruption. And okay, we have to first of all check what the category is. So if the category is actually all, so if category is equal to all, actually A should be written in a uppercase, and then we'll just return so we'll again await it as a future because we're returning a future, right? So return await db dot, so I'm going to do a raw query because I'm going to have a SQLite command. So db dot raw query, and now the command is like, if you have worked with SQLite, we're gonna say select everything. So select, actually select should be written in bigger case letters. Select everything from activity. So the table name is activities, right? So I'm just saying select everything from the activities table. Activities, I hope I wrote it correctly because otherwise it won't work. Okay, else, so if the category is not all, so if the category is weight or height, so else. Now I'm gonna filter the table depending on the category. So if it's weight, I'm gonna only have the banners with the weight. If it's height, I'm gonna only have the data with the height. So I'm gonna say return await db dot raw query again, and this time I'm gonna filter, right? So I'll say select, again select everything from activities, but this time we're gonna have a filter. So select everything from activities where, so where the type, so the type, so we have here, there's something called a type here, right? So the type is the filter, so we're gonna apply a filter. Type is equal to question mark, and this question mark, you can wonder what is this question mark. So for this question mark, I can just provide a filter here. So I can just open my brackets, and as a filter I'm going to use the string interpolation and category dot to lowercase, because for example, if the user just provides weight, so I'm going to just, for example, if the user just provides the weight as an uppercase, I just want to transform everything into lowercase. So perfect. So what I did was I said select everything from the activities table where the type is question mark, and this question mark is actually this parameter here. The parameter is just category and transform to the lowercase. And now we're actually finished creating the function for getting all the activities. Now we just have to go to the UI and apply this function. So before actually implementing this function into our UI, I'm going to actually create another model. So I want to just create a model for easy querying. You will see later on it will become really useful. I'll create a new folder for models, and then here I create a new model, and I'll just name it activity dot, and here I'm going to just create a class activity, and it's going to take in as a parameters. So first of all, we have the ID, right? So I'm going to say final int ID. I'm going to also have the date, so final string date. Then I'm going to have the data. What's the data? So final string data, and I'm going to also have the type, right? If it's weight or height, so I'm going to say final string height. Okay, perfect. And now I'm going to just accept everything because it's final. So I'll say activity this dot id, this dot date, this dot data, and this dot type. Sorry for that. This dot type. Okay, no, I just wrote height. Sorry for that, I don't know why. Okay, final string type and this dot type. Okay, perfect. Let's actually close this. Now we have created a model activity, and now actually we can go on and implement this function into our UI where we'll have the activities depending on the data in the database. Okay, so now let's get the data actually into our UI. So it's a bit tricky, but it's actually pretty easy. Let's go to home screen and down to our list where we have these three things. So here, okay, perfect. And after this padding, so we'll actually remove this padding. I don't think we need the padding because I'm gonna just put this into this whole column, right? So I don't think we need this padding. I'm gonna just delete it. Where is it? We can't remove this widget, and I'm gonna wrap this whole list view builder into a future builder because we're gonna get the data as a future and we have to extract it. Like we have to wait for some moment. We are gonna have a circular indicator. We have to wait for some moment so that we get the data and then we can show the data. So I'm gonna wrap it into a future builder. I'm wrapped with the stream builder, but I'll change it to a future builder, of course. And future builder is gonna actually just be really useful for us because now we can check for some statements also. So future, let's actually say future, and to get the data, as we said, for adding the data we just have to say database service dot instance dot get activities. But the problem is now we have to also provide a category, right? So I'm going to create a variable up here. I'm going to say string, maybe selected category or something like that, like selected tab, maybe. Yeah, selected tab. Selected tab is equal to, for example, yeah, at the beginning it's all rights. Now I can just provide the selected tab, and later on we'll implement this tab bar, of course. Here I'll just provide it down here. Where is it? Yeah, there you go. Select the tab. We have the future, and in the builder we have to check for something. So it could take some time to get the data. So to check in the duration where the data is coming, we have to show a circular progress indicator, right? So I'm going to say if the snapshot, the snapshot is actually the data dot has data. So I'm using this exclamation mark to say if it doesn't have any data yet, then return in the center so a circular progress indicator. I'm going to just wrap the circular progress indicator into padding also, and I'll just say from all, yeah, just give 40 pixels of padding. Okay, good. We checked for that, but what if you have data? So we have to extract the data here into list view builder, right? And I'm going to change something. So let's go to PubSpec. We have this grouped list, right? Now we're going to use this grouped list. So let's go to home screen, and instead of saying a list view builder, I'm going to actually use this grouped list view, okay? Because in between we're going to also show the date and so on. That's why we need this grouped list view builder. So I'm going to say return, instead of saying list view builder, I'm going to have a grouped list view. You will see later on why I'm using this grouped list view. It's actually really useful. So grouped list view, and it's a type of, so what's the type of the grouped list view? So it's a type of activity, right? So we have this activity class which we have created, and it has to also have a key value pair. So activity, and then the data is actually coming as a string. So I'll say activity and then also string. And in the group list view, it doesn't have any item count. We have to actually say something like a element. So what are the elements? So the elements are pretty much the activity list, so a list of activities. So to extract the snapshot of data, so we get the data as a snapshot or data, and let's actually extract it into a list of activities. So here I will say list, that's a type of activity. So I'm just extracting the data into an activity. So I'm transforming the data into an activity so that it's really useful for us. Later on you will see why it's so useful. So list activity, and then I'm going to just call it activity list. And here I'm going to generate a list. So I'm going to say list dot generate with a snapshot. So what's the length? We have to actually provide the length. So the length is snapshot dot data dot length. Depending on the data's length, we provide the length also. Now we have to create the actual data. So it's going to give us an index, and we're going to return an activity. So here I'll say activity. Activity. Okay, perfect. And in the activity we have to provide an ID, date, type, and data also. So let me just format this, but I can't format this. I don't know why I can't format this. I just want to format it into a beautiful way, but okay, let's do it like this. So the ID is in the snapshot.data. So snapshot.data, then go to the, depending on the index, so go to the index. So it's just creating a list. I'm just transforming a list of snapshot.data into a list of activities. So the ID is snapshot.data index point ID, and not point ID because it's actually gonna give us a key value pair. It's gonna give us a map, right? So I have to actually say ID like this, and it's the same for other things also. So ID, and I created a date. So date is like this. The data is, instead of saying ID, I'll say data, and for the type, yeah, it's pretty much just simple like this. So I have the type, and now I hope I can format this because it's going too long. I still can't format this. I don't know why. Okay, just leave it. Okay, but it's actually working. So we have created an activity list. So we have list of activities. Now in the elements I can provide this list. So I'm gonna just say here activity list. So here you go, take the activity list and just render out in a group list view. Okay, and shrink wrap is true, so it should be true. Okay, perfect. And physics, I have it. I have also the item builder, but now we have to actually check how are we grouping it. So we have a group list view, so we have to also provide how are we grouping it. Okay, I'll say group by. So we're gonna group by the depending on the date. Okay, so we have groups of dates. So if the date is, for example, today, we'll have 2 elements, and if it's tomorrow, we're gonna show the elements after that. So I'll say group by activity. Yeah, I can just say activity, and here we have to create a function. So I'm going to just return something, right? So I can just use this arrow symbol. So here what are we actually returning? So I'm going to use a date format. So here I'll say date format. So which date format? We're going to use the month date, I think. Yeah, month date, I hope. Let's actually import this. Okay, date format dot mmd. Yeah, it's but triple md. Yeah, mmd dot format. Now let's format this actually. So the date, what we have to provide a date, right? So the date is activity. So we have a list of activity list. So I can just say activity dot date. But the problem is the activity date is a string, and we have to provide in the format function a date time. So I can just say datetime dot parse to actually transform the string into a date time. Datetime.parse. I'm going to just close this also. Now we don't have any errors. So we're grouping the elements by the date. Here we created a list of activities. We provided the list here, and we're grouping everything with the depending on the date. Now actually we can just show every data here in the UI. So for showing the data in the UI, it's pretty easy. We have here hard-coded values, but instead of that, we have here our activity list coming from the database. So instead of saying, first of all, let's change something for the image. So instead of saying images/weight.png, I'm going to say depending on the type of the activity, show the image. So here I'm going to just say, but I have to provide the activity, right? So up here, after saying context and index, but we don't have any index for the group list view. So I'm going to name it activity, because in a group list view, we don't have any specific index or something like that. It's just going to give us the activity like this. And I can just use this activity dot type. Okay, perfect. So I have fixed the image, and now instead of saying 65 kgs, I have to show the data, like the data, right? So let's say 65. Instead of saying 65 kgs, here I'm going to say activity dot data. The dollar symbol is just providing a variable into a string. Okay, perfect. But the problem is now we have to show the kg and centimeters also, right? So here in the text, I'm going to say if the activity type, so activity dot type, if the type is equal to weight, then show activity dot data, then kg, but in here kg. But if it is height, then show it like this, but this time activity dot data and afterwards in centimeters. So here centimeters, and it's a quick fix. Actually, we're finished with this also. And let me just save everything, and let's also restart everything to see actually all the changes. Let me just restart everything, and we should have the data which is coming from the database. Just perform a hot reload, or yeah, do a full reset, it's better. See, it's turning the circular progress indicator, and we should get the data actually. And we have a problem, no such table activities. So did I create something false? Let me just go here and check for the, did I wrote, yeah, I wrote activities not correctly, sorry for that. Now let me just do again a full restart. It should work this time. And there you go. But still we have a problem. Type double is on the subtype of string. So let's just fix that also. Where is that? So this is giving a double, it's saying. So the problem is, I think I just provided somewhere a string instead of providing a double. Let's go to the model, and yeah, there you go. Final string data is actually a double and not a string. Let's fix that and now do a full restart. This time this should work. Let's wait for a few seconds. It should work this time. So there you go. And again, no. Okay, group separated builder. Okay, that I have to also provide, right? I just forgot that. I thought like I could provide it afterwards, but it's saying I have to provide it now. So the problem is we have a group list view, right? And we grouped it by some date, and we have to actually also provide a group separated builder. So after this whole adding thing, yeah, after this one, I'm gonna say group separated builder, because I'm gonna have a separate date and I'm gonna show the date, right? And it's gonna provide us with a value. So I'm gonna just take the value. Yeah, I can just say string value, and this is the date. So this is gonna give us the date. So here I'm gonna say return padding, give us a bit of padding, and yeah, the padding could just be const edge instead of all, or let's actually say from only from the top 6 pixels. And after providing a padding, now we have to provide the text, the actual text. So this text is going to be the date, child text, and the data is just the value which we are getting. Value style, I'm going to use the text style function again. Yeah, 23 pixels, and the color is going to be black, and the font weight is going to be font weight of W600. It should work perfectly this time. So what I did was, we are separating the data with the date, right? That's why I have to also provide the group separated builder, which builds the separated widgets, so which builds the separated date actually. Now let's do a full restart. This time this should work. This time this should work. Come on. So the circular progress indicator is telling, there you go guys, May 22 65 kgs. And if I would have like created something tomorrow, then I would have May 30 23, then afterwards this banner. Okay, let's actually also provide some padding. We don't have any padding, so let's go. Where didn't we provide any padding? So first of all, here I provided a padding, but somewhere I didn't provide a padding, it seems. Okay, here, so we have the uppermost padding, right? So child is just row, but let's actually wrap it into a column, and after the row I'll provide the future builder in the column itself. After this tiny little row, let's provide a future builder, and let's actually save everything, and this time we should also take the padding. There you go guys, perfect. May 22, and then we also have the data. So we have two things to fix, I guess. Yeah, two things. First of all, we have to implement this tab bar, and we also have to implement the delete button. So if I click on this, I should delete something. So we have to create a function in the database service to delete the banners, and just have to do some basic set state functions for actually updating the tab bar. So yeah, let's actually implement the delete functionality. So if I click on this delete button, I should be able to delete this banner or this activity. So let's go to database service and create a new function again, as we did for the add activities and also for the delete activity. We're going to do the same thing. It's pretty much similar like the add activity. So I'm going to just copy this and paste it over here. I'm going to just change it to delete activity, and then I have the ID. So I have to provide the ID to actually delete the data in the table. So I have to say int ID as a parameter, and okay, I'm initializing the database at the database, and here what I have to do is I have to say await db dot, we have to delete function. So we have to provide a table. The table is the table name variable up there. So I have the table name, and I also have to say where. So what are the parameters? So like depending on the parameters, so I'm going to just delete it with the ID, right? So where the column ID, this is a variable up there, right? So where the column ID is equal to question mark, and you can again wonder what is this question mark. So this question mark is going to be the parameter. So I'm going to say where arguments. So the argument is just the ID, right? So the ID which I'm getting here in the function. depending on the ID, I'm going to just delete the data in the database. To go for the database, we have a delete function. We have to just provide the table name, and we have to say like and we also have to say what, like depending on what we're deleting, we're depending on the column ID we're deleting it, and we also have to provide the parameters. So the parameter is just the ID which I'm providing here. And after that, so let's go to home screen and implement this. So we created a function for it. So let's go to our icons delete thingy here, and let's actually wrap it into an inkwell so that we can implement some on tap actions. So trailing inkwell and on tap, if I click on this, I should be able to delete it. So on tap, I'm going to say database service dot instance dot delete activity. Now I have to provide the ID. So the ID we get from the activity, right? So here I'm going to say activity dot ID. Perfect. So after that, I'm going to actually also say set state. So after deleting the activity, just set the state so that we can see the whole update. Where is it? After this one, set state, so that we can actually see the whole update, and let's actually see if it's really working. Let's save everything. And now when I click on this delete button, I should be able to delete this whole activity. So let me just click on this delete button. No, I can't delete it. Again, let's see if we have any error. Warning, invalid argument null with type null. This will throw an exception in the future. For now, it's displayed only once. Okay, we have some kind of error. I really don't know what the error is. Let me just go to the database service. So I said database service instance to delete activity. Let's go to database service. So this is programming, right? We always have errors. We just have to fix it. And yeah, I have set future int delete activity. I have the database type, and I'm saying return await db.delete. So I have the table name, and I'm saying where the column ID is equal to this. Okay, I had done that. And the where arguments, so I provided the ID. It should actually work. I don't know why it's not working. So okay, I found a solution. It's a really silly mistake from me. So I just debugged it. I just printed out the snapshot of the data, and I saw that it's column ID, but here we are saying ID. That's why it's not getting any parameters. So let's actually say column ID and not ID. It's my fault. Let me just save everything, and this time we should be able to delete everything. Okay, let's say actually just delete this dummy data, and click on this. There you go. You saw it, guys. I deleted the data, and we click on this again and delete this also. Perfect. Now let's add something, and let's see if that is working. So let's 45 kgs maybe, just an example. When I click on OK, we added it, but let's do a hard reload, and there you go, we have the data. So the problem is if I click on the add button, I should automatically see the whole updated data. That's why let's go up here where we are adding this, and we have to actually just provide a set state. So I just forgot it. After navigation.pop, let's also set the state so that we can see the live update. Let me just save everything, and when I now add a new item, let's say a height, maybe this time, maybe like 150 centimeters. There you go. Now I see the update in real time because I'm using set state here. So that's it for deleting the banners. Now let's actually implement this tab bar. When I click on this weight, I should only see weight values. When I click on this height, I should only see height values. So the last step is to actually implement the tab bar here. Let's go to the build tab function where we're building a tab. Here, build tab, and perfect. We also have the variable selected tab, right? And now I'm going to just create boolean variables. So here I'm going to say bool selected. So I'm going to just check if it is selected or not. So how do I check it? I have to say depending on text. So the parameter, if it is equals to the selected tab or not. Selected tab. So here I have a boolean variable selected, and depending on selected, I'm going to actually use this in the text, but let's actually also implement some set state actions. When I click on this chip, I should be able to change the color of this, and also I'll change everything here, right? So I'll wrap it into an inkwell, and I'll say on tap. When I click on this, I have to say set state. So let's actually do it like this in a function. Set state. So I'm going to set the state because I want to have all the updates, right? So what are we setting the state? We're actually updating the selected tab value, because this, again, down here we're providing it in the get activities function. That's why we have to change this. So I'm going to say selected tab is equal to text when I set the state. Okay, perfect. And when I save it, you will see it. When I click on weight, I'll only have the weight value. When I click on height, I'll only have the height. And now when I click on all, I will have everything. The problem is, like, the user has to have some nice UI experience, right? When I click on weight, it should change to white and so on. Let's do that. So here for the style, if selected, that's why I created this boolean variable selected. So if it is selected, then use this text style. But if it is not selected, so here I'm gonna say, I'm gonna just copy this, and I'm gonna use a black color. Okay, and let's save everything. There you go, all weight and height. And of course I want to change the chip colors into a white color. So for a background color, instead of saying colors with red accent, only if it is selected, show the colors with red accent. If it's selected, show the red color. If it is not selected, then show the white color. Let's save everything now, and we should have a nice UI experience also. Here you go, all weight and height. When I click on weight, this will be changed to red, because here we're updating a selected tab which is depending on a text, right? And here I have a boolean variable where I'm checking for a selected value, and here I'm just checking if it's true, then show the red accent color, or else show the white accent color. And it's working perfectly. The app is actually finished, I guess. Yeah, we're finished with this section. I hope you learned something. I hope you learned how to implement the SQLite database in Flutter. It's pretty easy, as you saw. Let's actually do a quick recap. And what we did was, we created a singleton, and then we initialized the database, and we initialized the database with some path providers and something like that. So we initialized the database with path providers, and we also created a table. It's like SQLite. We just used SQLite commands. Create table is basic SQLite. And for adding activities, we had some helper functions. db.insert, we didn't have to write so much of SQLite query commands, but here we had to write some SQLite commands. And here also, as you saw, we didn't write any SQLite command. We just used the helper function delete. And then we just got the whole data into our UI with a future builder, because the data can actually take some time to come, right, from the database. So we used the future builder, and with the future builder we also had this group list view to actually group the whole values with the date. So for example, if I open this app tomorrow again, so January 5th, then I'm gonna have the data, like I would have January 5th here and the data down here. So that's perfect actually. The app is looking also really good, and I hope you learned something and enjoyed, and let me just see you in the next section.